Welcome back. I'm Bobby Scheppske. The Gators will not only be under the national spotlight during this weekend's matchup versus Arkansas, they will also be under the lights in the swamp.
Head coach Billy Donovan referenced this in a press conference yesterday, saying that players were going to have to fill those new roles.
The Florida Gator volleyball team has won 13 matches in a row and will host the Alabama Crimson Tide next. The Gators have squashed, smashed, annihilated, and even rolled over the Tide in the past.
We're here live at College Game Day as the Gators prepare to face Kentucky. Gator fans are ready behind me. Will the players be ready tonight?
Women around the area are waiting for their chance to be a member of the first ever volleyball team at Santa Fe College. UFT basketball beat reporter Lola Glannon is in Memphis for the game tonight. Lola, what matchup in particular will you be watching?
And what are the chances he'll take that?
I mean, there's a good opportunity that he could get the job, but whether he wants it or not is still remain to be seen.
It's a toss-up.
A guy like Alex Murphy being your leading scorer with 10 points in this game, that's just not going to cut it.
Eventually an official saw it, and then he got kicked out. 2 texts and you're done, so he headed to the locker room.
While many of the Rowdy Reptiles have already left their seats, they did have a major impact in tonight's game against Kentucky. Just ask one of the Wildcats players.
Yeah, like I said, they're 39-0 all time and 37-0 under Coach Mary Wise.
Right.
Meanwhile, the Florida lacrosse team did weather the storm last night as they hosted Jacksonville University at home. In fact, the weather may have been their biggest opponent during the game as they demolished the Dolphins 21-5. Meanwhile, the Pittsburgh Pirates and the Cincinnati Reds played in the wild card playoff last night to determine who would face another NL Central powerhouse, the St. Louis Cardinals. But first, let's go to PNC Park, which was filled with more black and yellow than ever before. Fueled by the crowd, Pirates catcher Russell Martin decided to have himself a day. In the bottom of the second, Martin hit the first of his 2 home runs, with this one coming off of Johnny Cueto. And if 1 was nice, then 2 is even nicer as Martin goes yard again in the bottom of the 7th. A lot of bombs have been seen so far, but some players decided to make use of their gloves. Reds third baseman Todd Frazier makes this spectacular catch going into the Bucco fan base to snatch the final out of the second. Unfortunately for the Reds, that ends their portion of the highlight as the Pirates win 6-2, marking their first playoff win since 1992. Now, there was 29 straight hours of NCAA basketball action. Were you guys watching any of it, or it was just me?
Bobby Scheppske is courtside tonight. Bobby, what's the atmosphere like out there surrounding the game?
Well, Joel, losing to Georgia on Saturday was a big loss. First conference loss of the season for the Gators. Stark difference between this year's and last year's team, as last year's team didn't lose an SEC game. This year's Gators squad is starting 2 freshmen and 2 sophomore, very different than last year's senior-laden squad. Head coach Billy Donovan referenced this in a press conference yesterday, saying that players were going to have to fill those new roles. 2 of those players, Dorian Finney-Smith and Casey Hill. While they filled their roles, not all of the players on UF squad have quite improved to that point.
You know, as much as I want the process to be fast forward, sometimes with these players, they have to go through certain things before they actually can really grow, develop, and become the player that maybe we envision, they envision for themselves.
One player that really hasn't met the criteria is big man Chris Walker. While Walker has so much expectations coming into this season, he hasn't quite gotten to that point yet. Repetitions have been key for the big man. I mean, yesterday in practice, Coach Donovan put him through over 150 different layup drills. Even though he did that, we'll see whether or not that has an effect on tonight's game against LSU. Back to you, Joel.
Gate 3 is where you can find the Rowdy Reptiles the night before Florida takes on the Kentucky Wildcats. The Rowdies are camping out in front of the O'Connell Center in anticipation of the big matchup. While the Rowdies may be staying in the tents, there won't be much sleep in them. The rabid fans have been making plenty of signs and in traditional college fashion, watching movies late into the night. While all this may be fun, the Rowdies take the game seriously.
The basketball team, the players and the coaches, they put in all this work, and I think it's up to us, the students, to be out there, you know, full force every game, no matter what the situation is, no matter how the season's going, and to be out there, be loud, be supporting the team.
As if the atmosphere wasn't tense enough, College Game Day rolled into town for this matchup. The Game Day crew spent the morning hanging out with some of the students and even played a little one-on-one. While all of the Game Day crew would eventually pick Kentucky to win the game, they do believe that the fans can provide a spark.
What's the art of the upset? First and foremost, you know, to get a home game against an elite team, you've got to have an energy and a sense of ownership from the people in the stands. Obviously, Florida, I think that'll be pivotal.
Gator fans may have taken the call personally as the O-Dome was rocking throughout the game. Florida players were up to the challenge. They led at halftime, but were just short from pulling off the upset.
While many of the Rowdy Reptiles have already left their seats, they did have a major impact in tonight's game against Kentucky. Just ask one of the Wildcats players.
I'm away for a away game, and the atmosphere was just really loud, and it was crazy. And even for us on defense, it was very hard for us to communicate, being it's so loud. We couldn't make any defensive calls without not all of us here.
Since the birth of the Rowdy Reptile organization back in 2012, the Gators have only lost 4 games at home. They also ran off a 33 straight game winning streak before this year's loss to Miami. While the fans may be down about losing to Kentucky, the Gator faithful will always come back because, as the Rowdies will tell you, if you're not a Gator, you're Gator bait. For WFT Sports, I'm Bobby Scheppske.